Something I've never really talked about on this channel is my love for the Dynasty Warriors series. I grew up with 8, and I've been a massive fan of it and the Three Kingdoms as a whole ever since. The release of 9 had the future of Dynasty Warriors a bit up in the air because the game wasn't just a little bad, it was downright awful. I mean, the concept of an open world musou game is already a bit questionable, but they really messed that game up. I could go on about exactly why 9 is such a disaster, but I think that topic is better suited for its own video. Instead, I want to talk about the in-depth trailers that were released on the new game that's coming out, Dynasty Warriors Origins. I know I'm like a whole month late to this one, but I only found out that they existed like a day ago, so I'm doing it now and you can't stop me. When they released the first trailer for this game, it looked both very promising and a little worrying, because this will be the first time in the game's history where you can't just play whichever officer you want, including every other musou title, so Samurai Warriors, Dynasty Warriors, the Persona Warriors game, One Piece Warriors, all of that. A lot of the appeal of these games is trying out all the different character movesets and getting attached to them, so the removal of selectable officers is a very big deal. The other major aspect shown off in this trailer was peon formations. In theory, this doesn't actually change very much, besides making your army feel more emergent, something that has been absent from this series since Dynasty Warriors 5, maybe 6 if you're feeling generous. Some older titles had similar mechanics, like spear peons in Samurai Warriors 2 can use a charge formation that gives them hyper armor, or how archers and riflemen would try to stay in a line formation. Stuff like this made peons feel much more threatening, especially when combined with the peon ranks and overall much higher damage output. So far, we've seen an arrow rain formation and a charge formation, but it's unknown whether or not the enemy can use these as well. Already, the devs are trying to make steps towards making peons more involved in the gameplay loop, which is a very good sign, but we see later on that the hitboxes on swings are on par with, perhaps even bigger than Dynasty Warriors 9, likely to offset the fact that this game will have the most peons in the series. If it were up to me, I would keep both of these features, the formations and large hitboxes, and add back the old peon ranks and musou attacks to keep them a decent threat to the player. This would make them more tanky and give the slight chance to deal some major damage to the player without making them feel overly powerful. That was most of the things shown in the first trailer, and overall I felt a bit conflicted. The changes they showcased were all welcome additions, but the game still resembled 9, mostly in the visual department. Of course, it had improved on 9 a lot, but the style was about the same, and with that game being as terrible as it was hard to shake the feeling that this game would play or feel similar to it. But before I talk about the next trailers, let's take a quick look at some of the new character designs we saw. The new main character looks kinda weird, if I'm being completely honest, but I get why they went this direction. Most people wouldn't want to just be some random Joe Schmo, but he looks like a weird version of Jia Chong. At least this game has actual cutscenes that look really good. They remind me of the cutscenes from 7, which were the best thing about that game besides the music. Young Cao Cao is pretty neat to see. It seems like his overall design is a more simplified version of 9, which may be a running theme with some of the designs in this game. We also got a glimpse at Lu Bu, whose design seems to be a bit of a mix between his designs from 8 and 9. We do also see Guan Yu from behind in this trailer, but we both get cutscenes and gameplay from him in the next trailers, so we'll talk about him then. The beginning of the next trailer is a full cinematic, and man do these look good. It's also interesting that the first battle in this game is against the Han army instead of the Yellow Turbans, a nice change of pace to be honest. This is where we get to see the first battlefield, and it already looks so much better than anything from 9. Instead of generic town, field, or castle, this first area shows an actual sense of design. With it being the tutorial area, it's shaped in a simple line so that the objective is clear, and all the buildings surrounding it look very natural. We also see immediately that the peons are way more aggressive than they were in 9. The player's moveset also has clear ending points, so from the looks of it, the stupid launcher and gem system from 9 is gone too. That mechanic allowed for super easy infinites and made nearly every battle a joke. And I get that it was supposed to replace weapon skills, but the way they implemented it was Renbu system levels of bad. Here we see a charge move, which is pretty neat. I think the purpose is that your strong basic attack is actually somewhat useful because honestly, unless it buffs you or has a follow-up like Dynasty Warriors 8 Zhao Yun, you're never using basic strong, so it's a nice minor change. And here we see another element of actual stage design. The hill leading up to the village gate blocks your view of it until you reach the top, which acts as a sort of reveal, and from there they start a cutscene with an actually animated generic officer. This sort of thing has happened before, like Huazhong and Lubu's hypotheticals in 8, but to see a generic officer being animated with the level of fidelity we're shown here is so cool. From here, we just get more footage of the charge formations until we get to the switch segment. This isn't anything new for the series, but it's probably the only opportunity you'll get to play some of your favorite officers, so I suppose there's a point to showing it off. From there, they show off the two types of musou. Musou Rage is similar to the way they did it in 9, which is also the way they did musou in older titles as this sort of continuous flurry of attacks. And Ultimate Musou is a single huge attack, like they usually are in most modern titles. It's nice to have both, but I do hope that Ultimate Musou requires more resources because Jesus, that thing is massive. After that, you name your character and you have a conversation with Guan Yu, even allowing the player to choose dialogue options. Whether or not this will have any effect on the story is unknown, but in a perfect world, it would. To be honest though, I don't think it will, but I'm mostly fine with the inclusion regardless. In the final video, we're immediately shown the camp. Unfortunately, I can't read Chinese well enough to tell you what you can actually do in it, but it seems pretty cool. It's most likely just going to be similar to the sort of like pre-battle lobby that you would have in Dynasty Warriors 8. Immediately after that, we're shown the overworld, which I guess is the solution the dev team came up with to the open world problem. Instead of having a full-scale open world with nothing in it, we'll just make an overworld where points of interest are everywhere. Not a bad idea at all, to be honest, though I do hope that the side quests are more interesting than they were in 9. Another new feature is the War Council, which does what the pre-battle did before, but with a little bit more flavored text and snazzier visuals. For nerds like me, this is a pretty sick change, but for people less into the novel, it'll probably get annoying and drag on a bit. Hopefully they do add some sort of skip button for the people who just want to play the game and not think about the stuff in between. Moving on to the battle, we see our first fight against an officer, which has a couple more mechanics. The enemy officer has a defense meter, which is depleted by attacking them, dodging them with good timing, or parrying, and when it's empty you can instantly kill them. This is obviously heavily inspired by Sekiro and Wulong, and it has the potential to be really overpowered, but hey, at least it's really cool looking. The parry and dodges also adds a bit more skill into the fight, and it could be fun to parry everything and kill officers that way. When engaging with an officer, it seems that peons will back away and create a mini arena, kinda similar to something like the duel mechanic in 4. Also quickly, I just wanted to look at the mini-map right quick, because these maps are actually pretty huge. To my knowledge, this map is just for Sishui Gate, and doesn't even include Hulao. It feels so good to know that the stages are actually designed. I'm so glad they got rid of the copy-paste castles. I was so happy to see this. This was my genuine reaction to seeing that mini-map. Moving on, we also see that they're bringing back the gate mechanics that were in both 6 and 9, and this time we have battering rams that actually seem to take them out pretty quick. I found that opening gates in both of those games took an annoying amount of time. In 9 I didn't even try, I just used the grappling hook to ignore it entirely. It wasn't like my army mattered anyways. Finally, we see Huazhong fling ally peons like crazy, which is both a really cool visual and also mechanically interesting since flung allies can crash into you, making the really scary characters like Lu Bu and Guan Yu more intimidating and harder to deal with. So far, almost every change we've seen from these 3 trailers have been really good, and I'm very excited for the direction this game is going. It seems like the devs have really tried their best to correct everything they did wrong in 9 and come back swinging. There are only two things I'm still not feeling so great about, or at least I'm worried about, and that's the English voice acting and the music. 9's voice acting was rushed in at the last minute and used a ton of new voice actors instead of the cast they'd been using since, I believe, 6. Given this game's closer focus on story, it's safe to assume that the time crunch issue won't be a factor, but we still don't know if the old cast will be reprising their roles in this game. I know we should be giving the new voice actors a chance to redeem themselves, but it's really hard to have faith in them after the performances we saw in the last game. I'm not usually someone who cares for English dubs in pretty much anything, but when I was a kid, I played Dynasty Warriors 8 with the English voices, so I've become a bit attached to the English version of these games. So of course, I want the English dub to be good, even if I can just play it in Japanese or Chinese instead. In regards to the music, Masa has been the guys working on the music for basically ever, and this is the first time the music is done by a different studio in this series' history. We hear a bit of the new music through one track and two remixes of old ones, namely Eve and Wall of Fate, both from Dynasty Warriors 4, and while they definitely aren't bad, they lack the feeling of Dynasty Warriors music. Even 8 Extreme Legends and 9, which had more unique sounding tracks, still had that same feeling the music in the series usually does, but the new tracks just don't. It's hard to describe in a way that makes sense. It's just, the vibes are off. I'm sure there'll be some standout tracks in there somewhere, but I really hope they add a way to play old tracks in-game that isn't some annoyingly expensive DLC. That's also a bit concerning with this game. The DLC in 9 was absolutely bonkers and just shouldn't exist at all. I don't mind adding a bunch of costumes as paid DLC, but they really need to tone it down with this one. Now, to finish this video off, let's quickly go over the rest of the designs we saw in the 2 most recent trailers. Young Guan Yu looks pretty clean. He also seems to be a simpler version of his 9 design, which was already pretty good. I thought his face looked a little weird in that game. Thankfully that's been fixed now, and he's looking pretty great. Zhang Xiao is completely different. Like, he's no longer the funky, rambling old man with magic powers. Now he's this weirdly handsome dude that looks more like a model than anything else. As funny as it is, I still prefer his old designs more, 4 and 5 especially. Yuan Shao, Cheng Pu, Hua Zhong, and Chen Gong all seem to be the exact same as their Dynasty Warriors 9 designs, which is a bit disappointing, but I don't mind that much in this game specifically. With how many major changes they're making, I'll cut them a little slack. Yuan Shu is basically the same as 9, just with some simplifications, and losing the funny headdress. Jia Hodun cut the yellow and simplified the designs on his coat. Sun Jian is rocking some crazy hair, and his armor looks like a combination of his designs from 8 and 9. Pretty cool overall. Finally, there's Liu Bei, who looks so insanely different that it's downright comical. They seem to be going for the peasant look more than they've ever done before, and as much as I wish we got to see this design a bit clearer, we only ever got a side view of this new Liu Bei. It kinda weirded me out at first, but the more I look at it, the more I love it. And there you have it, every major change I noticed and my thoughts on them. I'm really liking the way this game is looking, and I can't wait to try it when it releases. They could have just reverted back to 8's gameplay and I would have been happy, but to see them really branch out and try something new after 9 is fantastic to see. And as sad as I am to see Masa go, I hope the new studio can give us a few bangers to listen to. I love talking about this series, and I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did making it. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments about what you think of the game, where you think the series should go, and what you thought of the trailers. I'll see you in the next video.